I'm very, very pleased and excited to be here with you two gentlemen. And we had a great conversation on the phone, didn't we? And I hope that what we can do here today is just continue the conversation about connections with fans, about audiences, and about how doing things today is not so different from doing things all along in that regard. I think we changed the name of this panel just in talking on the phone. It was going to be something completely different, and by the time we got into the conversation. So before we do, maybe you guys can just very briefly introduce yourselves in the context of the artists that we're going to talk about today.
Great. Can you hear me? Troy Carter. I run Coalition Media Group. We manage Lady Gaga and Grayson Chance.
Thank you, Troy.
Marty Winsch. I manage singer-songwriter Corey Smith from Jefferson, Georgia.
And why don't we start there? Marty, why don't you tell us a little bit about that story, because that's a good story. Not everyone knows it.
Corey and I met 4 years ago. He was teaching high school in North Gwinnett, Georgia, and he was a songwriter. I think he's, on some level, always been an artist. But he wanted to try and figure out, along with being married and having kids, whether or not it was possible to not be a teacher and to be a full-time musician. So we met, and and I went and saw him play and about 4 years ago, and we had some conversations, and he decided to make the jump, and here we are.
And so I have to know now, we all have children. Does it work? Can you do both?
Well, having kids is difficult enough. It's funny. I've always said that managing an artist is kind of use the same tools that you use with child raising, because
careful now.
You're right. Yeah. Except you add booze and drugs and some other things. It's not all that different. Seriously though, it isn't. It's about trying to find a proper balance. At least for Corey, it's about trying to find a proper balance, because he's always wanted to try. He's also an aspiring father, an aspiring husband. So it's about finding that balance between being a good father, being a good husband, and being true to his art. So it's a real balance. We try and incorporate all three of those things into the decisions that we make.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way it's a question that's been on my mind generally about artistry lately, because we're redefining success for artists in many ways right now. And one of the ways in which I think you have to measure success is in terms of sustainability and longevity. And more that means a life on the road, right? I mean, I was following this conversation that many of you may have seen. It was in the Left Sets letter with Steve Poltz. And he was saying, look, I've got a great business. I'll be doing this for 20 years. That's the good news. The bad news is I'll be doing this for 20 years or 30 or 40. There's not necessarily a retirement plan in the Steve Poltz business. Tell me a little bit about that in the context of your artist.
Well, I think one of the problems with the business of music these days is that the process of artist development has become generic. And the reality is that human beings, all of them are different. And we're all different. We all have different needs. We're all genetically linked in some way, but we all have different needs, and we all have different goals and different aspirations. And what's good for Lady Gaga might not be good for Corey Smith, and vice versa.
Yep.
We're all different people. So the approach to the management of the human being needs to be not so generic. It needs to be not so streamlined. It needs to be tailored to the individual. Now, there may be some tools, some internet-driven tools that can be used in a generic way or shaped to fit the artist's needs. But with respect to Corey, we just try to make decisions that best fit him as a human being.
Yeah.
And I think that to an extent is a sort of a lost art.
Yep.
And I think a byproduct, an unfortunate byproduct of that implementation has been sort of the watering down or making the product of art more generic.
Yes, yes.
So.
And with pop stars, we tend to think of them as being, because they become so ever-present so quickly, we tend to think of them as being manufactured in some lab and then drop-shipped, into the public consciousness. But Gaga was an artist for a long time. Mm-hmm. Stephanie was an artist before that for a long time. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about the road. How did Gaga become Gaga, and where did you get involved? When did you get involved?
My partner and I, Vincent Herbert, we got involved about 4 years ago after she was dropped from Def Jam Records. And, but, you know, what we, and kind of picking up on what Marty was saying about artist development, you know, it was, I don't think Def Jam had the time to do the artist development. And I don't think labels have, I don't know of any labels with artist development in-house anymore. So, you know, so as managers, and we basically have to take over that role and work with the artists on development and kind of, going back to what you said, there are lots of manufactured pop stars, sure, you know, where it's very formulaic. Go to this super producer, get this hit song, let's go to top 40 radio and let's put it out. And it's and that's part of what the problem is in our business right now. And you know, with artist development and A&R, it's just as important as R&D is at any major corporation. You know, it's a lot of time that has to go into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Troy, you and I were in another meeting and another conversation, and somebody in that room said, okay, come on, take the gloves off. If you had it to do again, and it was a really leading question, you wouldn't sign that deal, would you? You guys wouldn't be on a label at all. And you jumped right back and said, absolutely, I would forge that partnership again in a heartbeat. Tell me why.
100%, because it's not possible in September of 2010 to build a global superstar independently. You know, what we have is the luxury of a partner in Universal Music Group, where 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, someone in the world is working on my project. So, you know, so whether it's Australia, Japan, Europe, America, so it's that constant reach. And, you know, there will come a time where, you know, we won't need that sort of global infrastructure to build something as large as what was built.
Do you believe that's true? Do you think that day is coming?
I think it'll come. I don't know when it's going to come. I don't know, you know, what technology is waiting on the peripheral. But you know, one day there absolutely will be a time where it'll happen. Mm-hmm. But you know what? It takes a lot of money. It takes a really big team, and it takes a lot of resources and a lot of planning. You know, so you know, I'm just not from that school of managers that say, you know, the record labels are bad. You know, record labels are different now. You know, and it's our job to kind of fill in the blanks and pick up the slack. And we just look at it as an opportunity to, you know, for our company to get better at what we do.
Mm-hmm. Everyone, I think, at best views it as being, you know, a transitional time mm-hmm. for those companies. In your relationship, is it clear where Gaga leaves off and where Troy starts and where Troy leaves off and where the label starts? Is the division of labor very clear, or is it fluid now?
You know what? It's very well defined. You know, where it's a very trusting relationship. You know, we have partners in Interscope that know as a company, as a management company, we're able to deliver for them. So, you know, where I can have my own conversations with MTV. I can have my own conversations with, you know, with other partners, and they're fine with us delivering. Mm-hmm. You know, as far as, you know, Gaga and I are concerned, we have an incredible relationship when it comes to how the business is run, where, you know, we call it the 95-5 rule. You know, 95% of the time, I don't question anything creative. 95% of the time, she doesn't question anything business. And, you know, and that other 5% is when we negotiate and we explain, and, you know, and, you know, but it's a very trusting relationship that works.
And how about in the case of Corey? You do everything. Who are the partners? How does the division of labor work?
It's a little different for us because the entity is smaller, and because we run his record label, his publishing company, his merchandising company, his touring company. We run all those entities independently.
And when you say we, how many of you are we talking about?
Well, individuals from my company, three individuals from my company. Corey has a lot of involvement in the development of those things because he likes to be involved.
Yep.
He likes to be involved with a lot of those decisions. As the business has grown, though, he has realized that it's probably best for him to step out of some of those roles when he feels confident to hand them off to somebody. He steps out, and that's what I love about him.
Mm-hmm.
He makes the people around him prove that they have a viable solution to the issue, and then he steps out, and he steps into a more productive, artistic capacity. And that's why I have so much respect for him, because it's been a very gradual process, but I think in a way that's the way the artist development process needs to be. The artist needs to be responsible, number one, for the artist's career. You can't be so eager to just hand things off to somebody else with the hopes that they're going to find solutions for you. You have to take ownership of your career, of your life, first and foremost, and be charged with finding solutions to those issues. And then hopefully you have the ability to make good decisions about the people that you put in place, and then you have the ability to step out into more of a creative role. So even though Corey and I have been working together for 4 years, I feel like that it's very, to the name of the panel, it's a very old school way of development.
Yep.
It takes time. Because technologies have evolved to create certain efficiencies for all of us. That's great. But human development, artistic development, these two things, they still take time. You still need to find a way to be comfortable with yourself as a human being, with your own success. And those are the elements of the equation that take time.
Yeah.
It's funny because you're absolutely right. It's human. It's a natural process that you can't skip steps on. But we were on the tour bus about a month ago, and we were watching that movie Food Inc.
Yeah.
And how they stuff these chickens full of steroids. And
It's a documentary, the business of food, the productizing food.
No, exactly. But what happens is you have these mutated chickens and it's completely the growth process is completely unnatural.
Yes.
And it's the same thing that we've been doing in the music business. It's like
We're building mutated chickens so fat they can't stand up or walk.
They can't, and that's what's been happening. Anybody can have a #1 record right now. You watch a YouTube video, somebody spoofs a YouTube video, puts auto-tunes on it, and it's number 35 on the Billboard charts.
Yeah.
It's not hard to chart. It's not hard to get a #1 record anymore. But now what's tough is sustainability in this new space that we're in.
Yeah.
It's very, very tough.
It's funny because we were actually talking about this yesterday on the charts and measurement panel. Mm-hmm. Historically, the business, people did crazy things in pursuit of that chart rank, right? I mean, gaming the system, cheating, buying your own records, and it was all, it was supposed to be in service of making a lot of money because those things correlated, right? Being at the top of the charts. And now those things have become, in some cases, entirely divorced. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of conversation in the business. Frankly, a lot of the discussion around Corey has been around money and how extraordinary it is that this artist, and I think you've correctly described it as sort of an old school process of developing an artist, but at the same time, he's become emblematic because I think there are so many people who want to be Corey, right? Is there room for more Corys? Is this a singular story? I mean,
Well, first of all, I know Corey really well. You don't want to be Corey. As much as it is a blessing to be who he is from an artistic standpoint, it's also comes with a huge responsibility, and it's a burden because he doesn't just decide to get up and say, oh, I have to write today. That guy gets up, and the first 2 hours of his day are in the tub with his notebook. That's probably too much information, but that's what he does. He gets up, and if I try to talk to him before he's had 2 hours of clearing his mind, forget about it. It's over. The day is over.
Yeah.
So for him, he's a true throwback kind of artist, and he really, his writing is cathartic. I mean, it is something he has to have,
Yeah.
or he can't function properly. And I think there's obviously a lot of press about what Corey has accomplished. And I think he deserves a lot of that. But I think that what's come with that is sort of like the stigma of the anti-label, doing it outside the system. To me, that couldn't be more incorrect. Everything that we've done has been done to position Corey as an artist and a human being to be more in touch with himself as an artist and to give himself more confident as a human being, as an artist, to help him access bigger and better relationships, whether they're with independent labels, major labels, independent publishers, major publishers. We just want him to be better at being a human being and better at being an artist so that he has access to bigger and better relationships. So we're not anti-label at all, and I completely agree with Troy. We just want to be better so that by the time he has the ability to bring value to a larger entity, it's not just a crapshoot, that there's intrinsic, viable value there to help offset the risk of entering into a relationship like that.
And so he's afflicted with artistry, which is the word I always use. If you could choose, you'd probably choose to be an accountant or a lawyer based on the practicalities, but you don't choose, right? Gaga born an artist. Corey was born an artist. I'm sorry, they're afflicted. But so many people who are afflicted with that desire to create art are unable to turn it into something financially viable. And I think one of the reasons that Corey has become emblematic for people who just want to quit their day job is because he has appeared to do it entirely in a new way, right? Without having to impress that A&R man, without having to get signed to a label, without having to win a lottery. He built something with his own hands. And so I think a lot of people, aspiring musicians, look at that and think, okay, that could be me. Gaga, that could never be me. But that could be me with a little determination and a little luck. Why isn't it all of them? In other words, what was different here?
He's more talented than anybody else that's out there, period.
And that's basically...
And his background, he has a rare combination of things that only, I think, life can provide. He comes from a very poor background. He has one eye. He lost an eye in a rock fight with his cousin when he was 17 or whatever. His mother died of a drug overdose. He comes from a very poor community in Georgia. That combination of things, having to constantly pull himself up by his bootstraps and somehow utilize that God-given talent along with those socioeconomic life things, just all came together. It was a very, not calculated, but a very exact set of circumstances combined with the need to write, to function as a human being, and with a work ethic that I've never seen.
Yeah.
I've never seen. So it's,
desperate circumstances led to real determination.
Yeah, so you remove any of those elements from the equation, and I'm not quite sure it works.
Yeah.
And he and I meeting, I'm horrible.
You got it.
Him, was also just an extreme bit of luck for me. I mean, it really was. I mean, I fell into a relationship with this unbelievably gifted human being. And until then, I had been working with, artists for 10 years.
Yep.
And then I met this guy, and it just was luck. And all of these things that we believed in, sharing music with fans, giving them access to the music so that you align yourself with them morally as opposed to fiscally out of the gates with the relationship. All of a sudden, all of these tools that we believed in made sense because we had a guy that was sort of a spokesman, that was a perfect vehicle for these tools.
Yeah.
Until then, it had no traction.
Yeah.
So you try and you try and try, and then you finally find someone with the goods to make sense of all of these things that you believe in. But without that, without that artistic excellence aligned with all that passion and all those things, it probably doesn't work. So,
when I met the two of you, I was determined to make this a study in contrast to very different artists, to very different models. And I wanted to talk about, sort of the political bent that each of you and your artists had in the path that you chose. and the tools. And you guys, in the first 5 minutes of our first conversation, made clear that you weren't really particularly interested in talking about either of those things. For neither of you, nor your artists, was it about a particular bent. You know, we want to do this. We want to do this big in a traditional label relationship. We want to build something. We're anti-label. We want to build something. There was none of that in our conversation. And there was also very little discussion, even when I tried to tease it out of you, about technologies and tools. And I would kind of bring up, let's talk about the way you game a MySpace player to ensure that your artist is the biggest in the world. And both of you sort of categorically said, tools are just that, right? They're just the means by which we achieve something larger. Tell me how it's any different today than it would have been 25 years ago in terms of the way you built your businesses.
You know what? Of course, it's a lot easier today because it's, you know,
Easier today.
It's easier today in terms of building, in terms of communicating, artists communicating directly with their fans on a massive level. So if your Twitter base has, you know, however many millions of followers or hundreds of thousands of followers or whatever, and you want to get a message out, you could get a global message out instantly, directly from the artist to the audience, which, you know, 5 years ago you couldn't accomplish that. And so I think now the tools are a bit different, and I think 3 years from now the tools are going to be different, and then, you know, in another 10 years the tools are going to be a lot different, but the fundamentals are still the same. You know, the fundamentals of not skipping a step are still the same. I just think now, you know, between Twitter, between Facebook, MySpace, you know, the social network, and that I'm sure Apple will get right within the next year. I just think they're tools just to help build a global community with your fan base. You know, where 40 years ago, fans used to communicate differently. There would be local fan clubs, you know, different chapters in different cities. Yep. Now, you know, you're able to build this one big fan club and facilitate communities amongst the fans.
We used to get newsletters periodically from artists, right? If we were fans, we were in the club, you'd get this one-way communication that would come very infrequently, and that was it. That was your access to the artist.
Yep.
So let me ask you this. A lot of people in this audience, a lot of people in this business are hurting. It's almost been the elephant in the room for a couple of days here. We've not talked yet in any of these sessions about how catastrophic the damage to many of the traditional music businesses has been over the last few years. And I think there's an expectation among those of us looking at the numbers that it's going to get worse, that by a lot of measures, next year will be the worst year in the history of recorded music. Are you worried? Are you worried for your artists? Are you worried
Not one bit. It's a book called Who Moved My Cheese? It's as simple as that. Yes. If 10 minutes to read the book, everybody will get it. It's, you know, at the end of the day, people vote with their wallets. People vote with their wallets. You know, you go into, you know, we just had the conversation about, you know, you go into a Mac store, an Apple store, 2 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, you can't even get anybody because it's jam-packed. That stuff is expensive. You go to a Justin Bieber concert, jam-packed. Kids are spending $32 per head on merch. You go to a Lady Gaga concert, jam-packed. You go to a Corey Smith concert, jam-packed. People vote with their wallets at the end of the day. And I think we went through a time in the music industry, I think we're judging the economy of the music industry off of a bubble that we went through, and nobody wants to admit that it was a bubble. And during the days when, you know, when we were selling lots of CDs, it was a bubble. And, you know, we would entrap, you know, we would come out, we would have one good song and lock that good song onto 9 other bad songs or mediocre songs and force that consumer to buy it repurchase the catalog that they had on cassette, and at that time, things were very, very, very good. Now that consumers have choices, we have to go to that place. For us as a company, only thing we think about, and sometimes it drives the artist nuts, is the A&R process.
Yes.
Guess what? We're in the studio, and that's what I love about Jimmy Iovine at Interscope. We live in the A&R process. We got to get that record right, because if we don't feel like we have 4 or 5 singles on that album, we know how far the campaign stretches.
Yeah.
So now we have to go back to that place of make an incredible product. We have to go back to that place of, you know what? You can't just throw an artist from the recording studio onto the stage and expect them to be a great live performer. You got to work on the live performance. So between getting the record right, getting the live performance right, people getting the stage presence right, the interview skills right, all of those things right. That is going to be the determining factor in the survival of recorded music, if you ask me.
Well, back to the last question, I think that even with all the evolution of all the technologies, the reality is, from the artistic and human side, the more things have changed, the more they've stayed the same. The reality is we're all looking for the same thing, that visceral connection with another human being, whether it be someone that you love and want to get married to or commit yourself to, or an artist that you respect who drags out of you some sort of emotion. That's what we're all looking for. So that hasn't changed. That's been the same forever, and it'll continue to be the same forever. So with all the talk about technology, and you open up Billboard and all you hear is technology this and technology that, it's all bullshit as far as I'm concerned. It's about the human connection. It's about getting an artist to achieve excellence and taking them through the developmental process. That's the first thing I'd say. Second thing I'd say is all the stuff that we're talking about, it's all wonderful and it's all great and everything, but none of us know who any of you are. We don't know you from Adam, okay? So the reality is it's nice to listen to all these things, but the answers that you're looking for this week, with respect to all the great people at this conference, and I'm not suggesting you don't come next year when I say this, is that the one thing you should walk away from this conference with is the fact that the answers that you're looking for are here within each one of you, not here. None of us know who you are. So you need to look inside first and figure out who you are and what you are, and then try and figure out a way to convey that to other people and push your agenda. But don't look externally for answers. Look internally for answers and challenge yourself to achieve before you look externally. So that's what I'd say. And then the third thing about the industry and the fragmentation of the industry and how it's going to get worse, it was a bubble. And I certainly have a lot of respect for all of the people in the communities, major labels that unfortunately are casualties to the economic reality of where we are. But and it's unfortunate because a lot of these people are lifers in the business, and they're great people with great minds and talents and so on and so forth. But I think it's a necessary economic cycle. And I don't want to say I don't want to downplay because it's tragic, and I don't want to simplify it because it seems inhumane to say that. But in a way, I'm optimistic that we're heading to a time where this is going to lead to a refocusing on artist development, and the byproduct of all of this unraveling to re-ravel is going to be a refocus on the individual and achieving excellence in artistry. And hopefully that will bring people back to music and will bring people back to the arts, and inevitably be good for the industry. So.
I think a lot of the excess, that which is being shed now in the industry, was a function of that bubble. It supported not only excellence, but it supported some things that were very, very good and some things that were just pretty good, right? I mean, there was always a bar, but I think there was so much money in the machine that it supported and carried along some things that I don't think would stand a chance today.
Yeah.
So I strongly agree with you both that I think we're going to be looking at more and more individual success rather than categorical success, right? And I guess my question for you then would be, if you take off your manager hat and you think like a label for a minute, and both of you have aspects of your job that are doing just that. What's the answer to bring some stability back to the traditional record label business, given that you both sell a lot of downloads, you know exactly where that shift is occurring? What's going to bring stability back to their business, not yours? I'm not concerned for yours. Please.
I think the unfortunate reality of the label business is that it's run by conglomerates, and when you attach a quarterly profit, a quarterly accounting to a process that can't be accountable quarterly, I think it's an inherent conflict of needs. So unfortunately, there are so many decisions made that are in the best interest of the business that are not necessarily in the best interest of the artist. So I think that inherent conflict of interest is something that needs to be rethought before we can move forward. So
I know Jimmy's rethinking it.
No,
right?
totally. You know, everybody's model is going to have to change. It's apparent that it's not working. And, you know, for me, if I was running a record label, it would be about signing less artists, great A&R guys, and going up, northwest, and really, because I don't think the change in the music industry is going to happen in LA or New York. I think it's going to come from guys in the valley from a technological standpoint. Apple's going to control 80% of music sold within the next year and a half globally. So it's going to. You got to completely break down the model. You got to completely throw it away. And it's hard when you've had lots of success with it over the years, and you made billions of dollars with it over the years. It's hard to throw it away, but like you said with Jimmy, they have a hugely successful headphone business, an electronics business, and they're moving into other spaces. And I think that's the model that other labels I think are going to start to follow.
He's in the pop culture business, not in the shiny disc business. It has been for a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
baseball moved out of the steroid area, and it's time for the music industry to move out of the steroid era as well. I mean, we were in a steroid era where channels of distribution were so tight and the economy was what it was, and now we're in a different place. And so now we need to be more realistic about the expectations. And from a global standpoint, socioeconomic, proud to be an American standpoint, I think that we all need to learn to live with a little less as well. The artists need to learn to live with less, the executives need to learn to live with less, and we need to find a way to pass that along to the consumer. We need to not be so greedy. Ticket prices need to be lowered. Ticketmaster needs to figure out how to reduce ticket fees. We need to make these shows more accessible to the fans, and there needs to be more transparency, and there needs to be more. You need to give people the ability to afford to experience art. And the unfortunate reality is that greed and so many layers of profitability have jammed their way in between the artist and the fan, that at the end of the day, the only one losing is the fan and the artist.
And the artists, and playing on your point, artists have to understand how, we're in a space where everybody wants to get rich. And I remember when, this tour that we're on now, Live Nation's the promoter for the tour, and Gaga was so involved in the pricing of the ticket. How much is this? When we started off, our tickets were $20. Literally, every single ticket, we were doing clubs, every single ticket was $20. So my wife called me up and she said, they're selling tickets on, I forget which website it was, I think they were like $300, from a $20 ticket, they were $300.
Yes.
And one of the guys at a certain company, he said, because you priced it wrong. He said, that's where you went wrong, you priced it wrong. And I said, no, we did it absolutely right. We priced it right. It was our intent to make it affordable because it's part of the discovery process.
Yes.
And so, and it was really, and she was upset about, Gaga was upset about it, because it takes away, from a fan's perspective, you know what? I'm on I'm out at most of the shows. I communicate with these fans directly. Somehow they get my email address, and I get a million emails and phone calls from fans, and so I really understand. I know exactly what they paid, and our agent Mark Geiger called me up one day, 2 months ago, and he said, "I want you to go and look at the ticket price. Go on Ticketmaster and go through the entire process and look at the cost of the ticket at the end." And I was disgusted.
At the checkout, when
the
you finally
checkout.
click buy.
We do it
I
for
was
every show.
disgusted.
We do it for every show. We go through before we even confirm the date, we negotiate the ticket fees. We don't take any, Corey doesn't take any kickbacks or anything from Ticketmaster. We never have. We negotiate the ticket fees. We get as many, if we do a show at Ticketmaster, we can get theoretically 10% of our inventory allocated to Music Today, which is a reduced fee partner of Ticketmaster, so sometimes we can grab more than 10%. We do everything in our power to keep that Ticketmaster extortion fee out of the process, because a $20 ticket can sometimes cost $33. It's ridiculous, and none of that money is coming back to Corey. Not that we want the money, but the fan shouldn't be taxed. It's ridiculous. I mean, so before we even confirm a date, I go through the process and I make sure that I know exactly what the fees are going to be, and whenever possible, we try and find ways around forcing the fans to pay. And if we have to reduce our ticket price to get that fee in line, or to get the total cost of the fan in line, then we reduce our ticket price and we take less of a guarantee on a date, just to make sure that it's in line with what we feel like the fans should be paying for that show.
The fact that the two of you are even talking about this on behalf of your artists, to me, says a great deal about the change that's occurred in the business, because there is such accountability now for artists, right? And that fan relationship now is a peered relationship. It used to be that artists could hide. They could hide behind celebrity, they could hide behind all of the institutions that stood between them and fans. They could write that one-way fan letter and send it out twice a year and kind of be done with it. To get at the last question on the board, which was how's Corey giving access to fans? How do they connect on a deeper level? Let's just reframe that a little bit, which is...
I had no idea there were questions on the board.
I'm keeping an eye on them for you. How has that accountability changed your responsibilities and your artist's responsibilities to fans? There's no place to hide.
They'll
Is that a
call
good
you
thing?
out. Of course it's a good thing. You get automatic customer feedback. You do something wrong, you're gonna know it. And Gaga has a group of fans that will call her out. and it's good. And you know what? And when you have an artist that's willing to respond, and the other difference is too, and with she's 24 years old. She grew up, with MySpace, with email. She's a technological baby. Like, she doesn't know
native.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Where she used to stand out in Times Square in front of TRL. She's from New York, so she used to be in Times Square looking up at TRL screaming. So she knows from a fan experience what it feels like and what her expectations are. Yeah. So and it's only fair that it's reciprocated. That she gives. If we have to live in a world where, if a fan comes in and they pay that $90 for a ticket, they leave out with $180 worth of value, and they want to come back again. And that's the investment that we made from the very beginning, and that's the promise that we made.
Yeah.
Am I answering the question on the board?
Yeah, just in terms of,
Top 10 answers on the
of
board.
that accountability and the fact that now you have a responsibility to interface directly with fans.
Yeah.
Is that part of the program, and is that a good thing?
It's a good thing to an extent. There's a law of diminishing returns sometimes when there's too much accessibility, whether it be with me or with the artist. I'm not too sure that there needs to be total access with the artist. I think that there's value in anything that you can't access 100% of, and there needs to be a certain scarcity in the equation. So no, we don't like to give 100% access to Corey, and frankly, he's not good at it. He's an introvert. He struggles with human, one-on-one contact and so on and so forth. So it's not a forte for him.
Right.
So we try and steer him in directions that are good, where he can express himself artistically to his fans in the best way.
And you can't fake it.
No, and he tries, and it sucks.
Yeah.
And it's bad. And it ends up being bad for everybody, because then it's uncomfortable for the fan, and it's uncomfortable for him, and it's a train wreck. So, but we do give Corey's music away on his website. We give away his top 20 best-selling songs for free on his website, and I call it free because there's not a better way to describe it other than you go to our website and you download an MP3 and you take it home, so that's free.
Yeah.
But the reason we do that is because we don't want there to be any barriers to entry to experience Corey. If you want to experience him, you shouldn't have to go to a friend to get the song. You can come right to us and get it. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, we've never looked at it as a free transaction. The reality is that there's so much content, so many things out there today for us all to go and choose from, that the one thing that isn't free in life is time. So if you're choosing to come and experience Corey artistically and we're giving you an MP3, that's not a free transaction. We don't look at that as something that we're losing, an opportunity cost, a revenue stream. You're giving us your time, and that's 10 times more valuable than the money that we're not making off of that MP3. Time is something that none of us have an abundance of. So we would rather you choose us than somebody else, and we look at that as us having a competitive advantage by making Corey more accessible. And the second part of that equation is, if Corey's songs don't suck and people they resonate with people, then they'll come back and they'll want to support him financially and emotionally. And we want to give people the opportunity to support him financially and emotionally if that visceral connection between the artist and the fan is made. And we have faith that people will want to come back full circle and say, I want to support this guy because I don't want him to have to go back and teach high school social studies. So, we don't particularly feel like that the financial transaction up front is the best way to establish the relationship between the fan and the artist.
And I think faith in artistry is a great last word. They let us go over by a long run because
Did we really?
were having such a good conversation. Yes, I thank you both. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Continued success.
Thank you.
Thank you.